Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Betsy Pepine. She is an author, a serial entrepreneur, and she is the author of Breaking Boxes. Welcome to the show, Pepine. Betsy.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form, Betsy. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk about. We'll talk about how one can break through their own created invisible barriers that you reflect in breaking boxes. We'll talk about all that. But before, let's learn a bit more about your journey, your background, so that the audience knows who they are listening to.
Sure. So I started out my career actually in the pharmaceutical industry, spent a decade there doing marketing for various different corporate headquarters in the United States in various different product classes. And then in my 30s, I did a complete pivot, a 180, and went into the real estate profession, got my license, then became a broker, then loved that and built a brokerage, and then started adding other verticals. So I added a title company, a mortgage company, a real estate school, a nonprofit to help families with affordable housing, and a property management company. So really a one-stop shop for anybody with regards to real estate needs. It's been now 19 years that I've been in the real estate space and never feel like I work a day in my life. So that's a really nice blessing to have.
Absolutely, absolutely, Betsy. So why this book on breaking boxes? Why not any other topic? Either business, about serial entrepreneurship, and even about anything else. So I want to understand why this book, Breaking Boxes, dismantling the metaphorical boxes that bind us.
Yeah, well, great question. And it's a question I get asked a lot because when people hear I wrote a book, they assume it's a book about either building a business, how to do well in real estate, how to market yourself. And it really has nothing to do with that. It has to do with my journey when I was in my mid 40s. Despite I've been so blessed with success in my businesses, but I was feeling very unsettled and honestly not happy with my life. And I struggled with that for quite some time, thinking I didn't have the right to be unhappy because so many people have so much less than I, but I truly was unhappy. And when I dismantled that, and it took a while, it took a lot of journaling and meditation and yoga and therapy and a few other different modalities. And it's still a journey for me. What I realized was that my source of discontentment came from throughout my life when I felt confined by boxes that either my family of origin put me in, my religion put me in, my peers put me in, my industry, my gender. I put myself in boxes. And while I found some boxes may have served me at some point in my life, I may have outgrown them and chose to not exit them when I should have. Other boxes were probably never meant for me in the first place. My family really wanted me and my siblings to be physicians. That's what they knew. That's what my father was. And I had a lot of pressure to do that. And that box was never for me. And I struggled with that for a long time. And that's why I went into the pharmaceutical industry thinking, well, they want me to be a physician. I don't want to be a physician. I really like marketing. So I'll market pharmaceutical drugs, trying to kind of appease that desire of my family. But again, through self-awareness and a lot of soul searching, decided that path wasn't for me. And that's when I pivoted to the career that truly does suit me and my natural talent. So the book is that my story is about confronting these boxes that we all face. And some boxes we don't even realize we're in. And, recognizing and analyzing, do they really serve us or are they serving others? And if they're not serving us, why are we choosing to stay when it would behoove us to leave? So that's why I wrote the book.
That's why you wrote the book. I want to understand, in your case, we'll come to the boxes part. Why I ask this is so that, people who can relate with your story. They will not go that whole life to earn just money, but look at. So I want to understand you, Duke University, MBA for Wharton School of Business. You know, so much of you have done, achieved in terms of, in terms of entrepreneurship. You achieved that. A lot of people who do not have money, they are also unhappy. You achieved what you wanted to. I want to understand what is it that after achieving things that you want to, when you went to MBA from Wharton School of Business, it means you wanted to be in that line. That's why you spent so much of money. You want to go. And when you do that, you reach that destination, you don't find it the way you want in your life. What is it that is, you keep on still looking for? The reason I'm asking is that many people who are in the same path want to be there, are they walking on the wrong path? Should they take a U-turn? I want to get a bit of your understanding from that point after achieving everything.
Well, again, like I said, I was truly blessed. I had a family that one of their
maybe sorry to interrupt. Maybe that was also a box.
Yeah, I mean, it was that, and I'm so happy that I have that. I'm not saying I'm not, but that was expected. It was not, are you going to college? It was always, what graduate school are you going to go to? There was always an expectation that we were all going to be highly educated. That was a non-negotiable. And I'm glad. I mean, it set me up for success, but I just went through the motions and I literally checked the boxes off because that's what was expected of me. And I enjoyed it. I loved Duke. I loved Wharton. And again, I'm glad I had the structure that I did, because I don't think I would have done that had I not had the family system that I grew up in. But I found that I checked off all these boxes of what success looks like. I went after the awards and national recognition and what society deems to be, you've made it. And I felt empty. So I think it's because I never stepped back and said, what does Betsy want? What is it what's going to make me happy? And then also recognizing, and I really understand this now, is that the journey and who you become in your journey is what it's all about. Where I was so focused on the destination, the diploma from a certain school, the recognition from a certain society in our country, those outward, sadly shallow recognitions of success. And I wasn't focused on who I was becoming and enjoying the journey part and living in the moment versus always looking for the future and what's next. So I felt like I was on this hamster wheel. And the minute I achieved something, and I did that in sports too. I mean, I was a runner and a good one. And then I would win one race and then I'd be like, okay, what's next? And it felt like it was never enough, because it never filled it's like, Betsy, you are enough here now, today. What will bring you joy? We're here for such a short period of time, here on earth for such a short period of time. And I feel like I didn't recognize that and appreciate that in the first 40 years of my life. And I'm really trying hard now to truly, every day, I wake up every day understanding this could very well be my last day on earth. And am I living it? If this is truly my last day on earth, am I living it the way I want to be living it? So it was a wake-up call for me, and later in life, sadly, but at least I got there. And I'm on this quest to continue that journey and finding joy in just the little things that speak to me as a person, not what other people, society, my peers, my family think, but what does Betsy want? What does that joy and peace look like for me?
Right. Let's come to the boxes. What's wrong with the boxes? That's the way nature has made us. You look at every design. Our house is also a box. We have different places. We have different. You are sitting in a almost like compartment sort of a box, which helps you do you segmentize everything. And that is where for better coordination, better understanding of where we are.
Totally.
Even the universe has devised, the earth is a box, otherwise we would be floating in the universe. Our brain has been made left and left brain, right brain, so that we know who we are. The left hand as a person, we are asymmetrical half, not fully, equitable half.
Yeah.
Everything that we talk about, the society has created some things. Some we may not agree with some of things, but so that the society can function. It's not about one, it's about society.
Right.
How would you like to look at this? What's wrong with the boxes? Or are we looking at boxes differently, a bit incorrectly? Help us understand. You have written this book.
I think you bring up a great point. And I think if we go back in time, we had to have boxes to survive. We were hunter-gatherers. We had to quickly identify who and what was good or bad and a threat to our survival. So that was probably one of the earliest boxes, good and bad, threat or non-threat. And then as we get inundated with more and more data and information, we have to categorize. And by categorizing, we have to put things in boxes, because there's no way we could assimilate everything that's coming into our brains if we don't. So I'm not saying boxes are bad. I think they can become uncomfortable. They can become not right for a certain person when we start. And this is what the tricky part is. Once you start categorizing, we have a tendency, human nature, we start to judge, and we start to generalize. And so you put somebody in, let's say, a physician box, and they do something outside the norm of what you think a physician should do. And suddenly it's, oh my gosh, can you believe it? Only because that person chose a career, nothing to do with that person's also human. Same, we see that with the priesthood, and when they have indiscretions in the priesthood, it's like, oh my gosh, we have this person because of their occupation in a box, or the police force. We have these certain adjectives that we already assume go with the industry when we know nothing about the person. And so I think we stop seeing who the person is when we start putting people into boxes. It's like, and I wrote about in my book, a very simple example is when my children were learning words, we would walk through the forest and I would show them all these different trees and the barks and the leaves and the colors. And they were so enamored by the differences of them. But then when I taught them the word tree, they had no interest in all the nuances within each tree species. It's like, Mom, I already know that's just a tree. So it's like, once you assign a word to a thing, you already start to think what it's about. You see that in the maternity rooms. When a newborn is born, they've done studies where the adjectives they've used, the people in the birthing room, the adjectives they use to describe the child vary greatly depending on the gender. They know nothing about this child. They've known this child for 30 minutes, and there's already a certain set of attributes that are being attributed to a child just based on gender alone. They know nothing about the human. So I think that is the danger. And then with stereotypes, there's also these expectations. And so some of those expectations you may not want, or you want the box, but you don't want the expectations that go with the box. So I'm not saying all boxes are bad. I think they could be used in a harmful way and keep us confined. And they are a human construct. You don't see animals creating these different boxes and different expectations and judging different people's behaviors. It's a human construct that can work for us, but I think we have to be aware of the limitations.
Absolutely, Betsy. Well explained. Let's look at it that way. Maybe we should be looking at it then like a house renovation, something like outdated. So we want a renovation of one particular part of house, kitchen, bathroom, drawing room, whatever it is, or the complete house itself. So let's look at these boxes that you talk about. What are these metaphorical boxes, and especially those that are not good for us, that are holding us back? Help us understand these boxes in that sense.
Well, I mean, there's so many. There's boxes based on our roles: the good girl, the good boy box, the good wife, good husband, good father, good son. All those boxes based on the roles we play with different people in our lives. It's also boxes based on our gender. There are certain expectations, and culturally, of a man versus a woman, just based on their gender alone, which may or may not apply to the individual. There are certain boxes based on the industry. I'm a serial entrepreneur in real estate, and I felt pressure to have the house that would coincide with what you would expect a successful serial entrepreneur in real estate would have. So I bought a big luxury home. I hated it, never felt like home. We disconnected as a family. You had to text somebody to see if they were in the home. And so I downsized. I ended up buying back my grandmother's house, which came up for sale. My grandmother had passed. I grew up next door to my grandmother. The house had so much sentimental value to me. The house is 1,600 square feet. I went from 5,000 square feet to 1,600 square feet. It's a very old home in a very old neighborhood. Not what some people would expect a successful entrepreneur in my town to be living in. And people are often surprised when I tell them where I live and what neighborhood I live in, but I've never been happier. So that's just one example of a very small box that I feel in my industry. And every industry has their own, I think, pressures that they feel they have to perhaps live up to. So the boxes can come from your industry, your gender, your religion. I was raised Catholic, and Catholics, by definition, there's very strict rules and things you're supposed to believe and not believe. And I still identify as Catholic, but I don't believe all of those things. And I actually went to the priest and told them that and said, listen, I can't come to this church and worship if you don't know how I feel. I don't want to feel like a fraud, and I don't want to feel like you all think I believe everything that the Catholic religion believes in, but I would still like to worship here. And so, because prior to having that conversation, I felt like a hypocrite that I was in the pew, but I didn't believe everything that the true, that's a box, but what I grew up believing the true Catholic should believe. And so our religions can force things on us that may or may not be true to us. And it's not just external forces. I think we ourselves put ourselves in boxes. I think some of the things I probably attribute to my family of origin, I put on myself because I've spoken to my sisters, and there's some boxes they never felt. So we all grew up in the same house. And so I think I internalized some things differently than they did and put myself in boxes. So I just think the more we can be aware, the more we can recognize, is there a disconnect? Our body will tell us. Our body is the first one to tell us, not our mind. Our body tells us, are we in alignment or not? And if we're not in alignment, let's work towards being more aware of taking small steps to get in alignment with our body.
Absolutely, Betsy. So boxes should not become barriers. Good boxes also should not become barriers. But then when they become like that, why do we continue to be there?
Yes.
Why don't we just break them off?
Great question. So I believe there's a couple of reasons. One is we resist change. We really do. Even change we know is good. I see this in real estate all the time. People are moving for a promotion or a job birth or something good. It causes stress. So people inherently resist change. So that kind of just puts a block on some people. I don't want to change status. I'd rather live a mediocre life in status quo than having to go through change. So that's one thing. The other thing is fear. And to me, there's three main fears. There's fear of losing your status within the community, within your family. Like I did, I felt a tremendous fear when I got out of pharmaceutical marketing and decided to be a realtor. In the United States, to be a realtor, you take one class and you pass an state exam. You don't even need a high school education to get your license. So to go from having the education that I have to becoming a realtor, I worried that my status within my family would go down, and it probably did. It probably did. And I was okay with that, but that's a worry for some people. The other fear is a loss of social connection. When you start moving, it's like a chess game. When you start moving the pieces, everyone else is affected. People don't like to see you change. So your social network is going to change when you make a change. It just is. It's not bad, but it is going to change. And you have to understand that, recognize it's for the good of everybody, but that is going to change. And then the other thing I think people fear is a fear of financial loss, because oftentimes when you move out of a box financially, especially if it's career oriented, you may lose some income at some point for a short period of time. So you have to shore up that, whether it's a second job, maybe your partner can help out. The gig economy, has created wonderful opportunities for people to pad their income. But those to me are the fears and the resistance to change. The resistance to change one, I always tell people, write down worst case scenario. What is the worst thing that could happen if you make a step outside this box? Usually fears are magnified when they are not concrete and written down, but when they're just in your mind, they tend to be overwhelming. But when you put it on paper, it doesn't look as threatening. And most of the time you're like, you know what? I can deal with worst case scenario. The last thing people fear is failure. What if I make this change and it's failure? Well, failure is a box. It's another box. Failure does not exist. To me, and that's why I think I'm always seeking change, because for me, I do not believe failure exists. I believe the outcome may not be as I expected or hoped. So I may have to make a pivot, but worst case scenario, I have learned something and grown from this experience. So that's worst case scenario. That's not bad, right? And so that helps me. If ever I start to feel myself having that fear, I do that exercise, and it really does help me move forward.
Right, Betsy. Let me understand a bit from your personal example. Moving from a 5,000 square feet house to 1,600 square feet, if I understand, and that to a neighborhood, that people may look at it differently. Nothing wrong with you. But then that is the type of, accolade people want when they move on to a big, powerful address that's why they throw those housewarming parties actually to show them off the new place, their status that they have arrived in life. Didn't you fear at that point in time? You said you are happy here now in this house, if it's the same house, and that, how did you tackle it? Because here your prominent part was that I am happy, let everything be after that. Why are we not able to see that part? Everywhere else we want validation from others, acceptance of others. Only very wise person will understand that my happiness comes first, and I'll stay where it makes me happy. How did you deal? Didn't you think, okay, your status in the industry, they will think, okay, Betsy, she has changed, and maybe she is not financially well off, or whatever it is. So many things can come into their mind. That may start taking care of the way they will start taking their business decisions. It will impact you. I want to understand that part of mindset. What was the strong point that you dealt with, and how did others take it?
I just stopped caring about what other people thought. It wasn't getting me anywhere. And I thought, who are these they? You say they will think. Who's they? I mean, really, who is they? I couldn't even think of a single person. It was just this collective they. So, and then I'm like, this is my life. And again, I think the older we get, the more we see death. And so you recognize how valuable every day is. And so I'm like, I have to say yes to myself first. If I'm saying yes to that house, I'm saying no to me. And I'm not willing to make that gamble anymore. I used to be able to, but not anymore. And the reaction, definitely surprise. It's the neighborhood I grew up in. So I actually lived next door to the house. I was 5 years old when I moved into the house next door. And there's been definitely a lot of surprise. I think my neighbors who I knew when I was 5 are very happy that I'm here, but definitely a surprise. But I don't care, because to me, this is reflective of my values. That house was a total disconnect from my values. Same thing. I used to have a Rolex. I sold that Rolex. I hated that Rolex. I would move my sleeves down because I didn't want people to see I had a Rolex on, because that's not who I am. I am not saying a luxury house is not good or a Rolex is not good, but for me, it did not work with what I find of value and what brings me joy. And it was a huge disconnect between what I want in my life. So for me, it was best to rid myself of those things.
Absolutely, absolutely. Sometimes, you don't find value in gold. Sometimes it is dust that you
Yeah.
find it, and that is your
Yeah.
stardust, or so many things that you can call
Yeah.
it. That's the way you break your boxes, ones which were very dear to you. This topic is not an easy one. How did you deal with this topic in your book, Betsy? About breaking boxes. Tell us a bit about who is this book for. Is it about those stuck in the boxes, or is it about those who have broken it? How
Well,
should people?
so that's a great question, but I actually think, I mean, I wrote it for people who weren't sure, like they're feeling a disconnect and they weren't sure why. But what I found after it was released several months ago, what I have found is so many people are recognizing boxes that they have put others in, whether they're parents or bosses, and it's opened their eyes up to the vast array of boxes. I mean, boxes are everywhere, and how small assumptions that they've made may not be in the best interest of everybody. So it's really for everybody.
Absolutely. And talking of change, yes, many people do not like change.
Mhm.
But how should we look at change, Betsy? You have worked in
Mhm.
several environments. Is it change for change sake? Is it change for excitement sake?
I think.
Why fix something when it's not broken? Why break a box when
Mm.
it's still a good box? Help us understand then, how should people look at change? Is
Yeah.
it only because to satisfy your rebellious streak, later on realize that was not the. How should one look at change positively?
Um, I choose to look at change. So it's like in business. If if I stay in a plateau, I'm behind. You're either moving forward or you're moving back. There's no such thing as, to me, staying the same. So if I'm not seeking growth, I seek growth, not change. But usually with growth comes change. So if I'm seeking growth, then change is a natural result of that. If I am just content with the status quo, then to me, I'm falling back and I'm not growing. I don't grow when everything's great and we're getting wonderful reviews and sales are good and no need to change anything because we're doing great. I'm not growing. And so I am constantly trying to seek mentors, people who are a couple steps ahead of me, whether it's my spiritual growth, my entrepreneurial journey, my faith, whatever. Always looking for people who I can learn and grow from. And then that usually starts the change process. So that's how I look at change. And I purposely try to be uncomfortable. I tell people I am most comfortable outside my comfort zone. Every morning I wake up now, I take a cold shower. And I'm not comfortable in a cold shower. But it starts the day and I'm like, if I do nothing else today that makes me uncomfortable, at least I took my cold shower. And it's like a muscle. And it builds resistance. You learn more about yourself. You understand what you can tolerate and how you can adapt to environments that you may not personally want to choose for yourself. So that's how I look at change. It's a pathway to growth.
Absolutely. There is much to learn about all this from you, Betsy, and I'm sure a lot of people would want to learn from you, about the way you do things, about your book, from your book. So, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
I'm sure I'm on all the, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn with my name at Betsy Pepine. And then my website is just my name, betsypepine.com. So those are the best ways to reach me.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.